Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Birch, and welcome to the Health Detective podcast. My guest today is Walt Hampton. Walt is a man of many talents. When he's not out running ultra-distance marathons or out sailing on the oceans, you'll probably find him climbing very high mountains. And somehow he still manages to fit in being a dad to 3 sons, a best-selling author, and a keynote speaker. He's the director of the Success Academy and the founder of the Positive Leadership Academy. So Walt, thanks so much for coming. I'm really excited to be talking to you.
Susan, I'm so happy to be here with you, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's a privilege.
It's great. So would you start off just by telling us a little bit about yourself? I know you began life as a lawyer, so would you just tell us?
No judgment there, Susan, no judgment. Yes. I came out of
where you are. Yeah.
I came out of Cornell Law School in 1984. I had a kind of typical education path with a professional mom who expected us to go to good schools and get good educations, and so I went down that traditional path, and I loved law school. But I immediately discovered very early on that I didn't really enjoy the adversarial nature of that. But I persisted, as one does, and spent 25 years in the law, becoming the managing partner of a firm, and raising 3 young boys on my own during the course of that. I have a beautiful daughter as well. Always important to mention her. And through a very interesting set of circumstances, about 15 years ago, I had the opportunity to meet Tony Robbins, and I was invited by his team to apply for his coach training. And I didn't know what coaching was. Coaching was very early in its evolution at that time. I thought it had to do with one of my boys' soccer teams. But I discovered coaching, and I, in fact, trained with Tony and became one of 70 of Tony's elite level certified business coaches and worked for him for a period of time. And I discovered that I could take all of my skills, all of my background and experience, and work collaboratively with people, which I love to do. And being entrepreneurial, my beautiful wife, Ann Shabani, who you know, the publisher of Summit Press Publishers, and I began Summit Success International now 15 years ago, where we help successful entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs who want to grow and scale their businesses to create amazing businesses and lives they love. And we work with coaches, consultants, speakers all around the world. I do a lot of the executive coaching work, and Ann, of course, is the publisher at Summit Success Publishing that helps them take their books and get them out in the world. And we do have some interests and passions that include high altitude mountaineering and ultra distance running and all of those other things you said.
Well, it sounds like a pretty amazing life. So I'm really interested in how you got there to achieve this. So, you trained with Tony Robbins. So, I get that, that's probably a pretty big head start in many ways. But what is it about your thought processes, attitudes, systems? What advice can you give to people about sort of turning their lives around or changing their lives up a bit, to achieve their goals or those passions, those feelings that we have inside of ourselves that we want to realize?
So there are a lot of threads we could pull in that question that are interesting, but I'll start with the most important one, Susan, which is actually getting clear about what we want. What often happens as we get into our adulthood, particularly into midlife, we lose touch with what we really want. It meanders in our minds, but as Sean Aker of the Happiness Advantage, author of the Happiness Advantage, says, often the cognitive horizons of our lives begin to flatten and everything begins to look the same and mundane and day in and day out. And of course, over the last 18 months that's gotten even more acute. When we're little, we actually know what we want. We connect with our hopes and dreams and aspirations. If you all ask any little kid, what do they want to be when they grow up? They know they want to be rocket scientists and, doctors and nurses and not lawyers very much, but they know what they want. When we get into midlife, a lot of times we lose touch with what lights us up. And so a really important place to begin is to reconnect with what makes you happy, and to get clear about that. Because what I believe is that we are the co-creators of our lives, that we do have the ability to consciously co-create that which we want. But that starts with understanding what we want.
Mm. Is there a process that you take people through to achieve that clarity?
Oh, we have. So we work primarily with mid-career professionals who are pivoting and creating something new. And so, yeah, we do have exercises to take people through. But one of the very first questions to journal through and to stay in is, what do I want? And there's a wonderful prompt that I love. It comes from the Abraham Hicks work, Esther Hicks. When we don't know what we want, a wonderful thing to hold, a wonderful statement to hold is, I want to know what I want. And just holding that question, I want to know what I want, is a really powerful statement to hold. And it's amazing what will tumble in on people when they stay with that statement long enough. And so, I encourage people to hold that statement, to journal through that statement, to get clear about the things that light them up. And they don't have to be complicated, and they don't have to be, climbing crazy mountains. It can be the thing that lights you up, the thing that lights your listener up.
And
But that's the place of beginning.
How important do you think journaling is in that process? Do you think that holds a really powerful place?
So most of my clients suffer from SPS. It's a very pernicious syndrome, smart person syndrome. And what smart people think is that in their smart minds, they can figure everything out. And everything stays this massive jumble in their minds. What happens when we actually get it out of our heads? And actually, I prescribe old-fashioned journaling with a pen or a pencil and a notebook. It moves the stuff out into the world, and through a journaling practice, you can begin to see patterns. You can begin to unpack those things that have been just running around. So I've been doing a journaling practice for close to 30 years now, every single day. And I would say it's one of the handful of practices that has seen me through the decades and has allowed me to get the clarity that I have.
That's really interesting. And I think there's a lot of evidence about actually writing, that, the act of actually writing is so important in that.
Yes.
So, my podcast is a lot about nutrition and well-being and how people can move themselves, to a state of improved health and well-being. And, you probably see it, I see it with my clients. They are just so overwhelmed and so frustrated and really don't know how to take care of themselves anymore. It's just work, children, obligations.
And of course, that has become exacerbated in the last 18 months. And, my client population, entrepreneurs and business professionals, are particularly susceptible to this anyway. At the beginning of my keynote around the power principles of time mastery, I say the wonderful thing about being an entrepreneur and business professional is that we have the freedom and the flexibility to work whatever 18 hours of the day we want. And the boundaries get even fuzzier when we're not going somewhere. You know, if we're sitting in front of our Zoom platforms all day long. So there was a clue to the answer in the question you asked. And you said, how can we get people to move to a state? Well, the word move is a good first place to start. If we can get back in our bodies and move again, that's a wonderful place to start. Even just getting outside in the daylight is a wonderful place to start. And if we can move in our bodies, and again, it doesn't have to be the crazy stuff that Ann and I do. It doesn't have to be distance running. It can be a walk around the block. It can be a walk down to the coffee shop. But the more we're in our bodies moving, we're built as human beings to move in our bodies and not to be sedentary. So when I'm talking with executive teams about wellness, I teach the health triad. And my slide is a triangle, and it has E. And the caption at the bottom is E cubed. And it's eating, exercise, and emotional well-being. And the emotional well-being piece is at the base of the triangle, because that's, I think, where it all begins. I don't know whether this resonates for any of your listeners or not, but if I start getting stressed, I'll look for the chocolate chip cookies, or I'll look for something bad, or I'll look to tamp down the anxiety, self-medicate with alcohol or social media. And so that emotional well-being piece is really critically important to get a hold of our emotional wellness. And then the other two pieces, and it is a triangle, they all hold each other up, is the eating. If you're emotionally fraught, you tend to eat garbage. Some people, even if they're not emotionally fraught, tend to eat garbage. And so dialing in the eating piece, eating good, clean food. I mean, a lot of people drive really nice cars, and they treat their cars and put the fuel in that's actually, the premium fuel into their cars, but we put crap into our bodies often. And then the exercise piece, I've already alluded to, moving. The more we can be in our bodies, the more we move, the more we take care of this magnificent thing that is our bodies, the better it will serve us over time. And so I think all three of those pieces are critically important to going the distance and creating the life you want.
And then that gives you that very solid foundation to absolutely build everything else out on.
Yes.
And so time management, because this is something that, you alluded to before, and something that people really struggle with. And I know this is something that's sort of in your area of expertise, pretty much. What sort of advice can you give for time management? It's so easy to get distracted and procrastinate. I know for me, when I'm trying to do hard work, is the time when I really want to procrastinate, and that'll be the time where I want to stress eat or look for any escape route I can possibly find.
Well, procrastination is its own demon, and we can spend some time on that. But let me address the first question around what can I talk about around time management. Well, first of all, time can't be managed. Simply can't be. It is a zero-sum game. Time will pass you by no matter how hard you try to manage it, how hard you try to wrestle it to the ground. The little subtlety about my book is it's the power principle of time mastery. Because what I believe is that if we can become masterful around our own lives, mastering our state, mastering ourselves, we are better stewards of our time. So the first concept to disabuse oneself with is that time can be managed. It can't. And there isn't any more time. Everybody says, I wish I had more time. Well, you have the same amount of time as I have. You and I have the same amount of time as presidents, prime ministers, and kings. There isn't any more of it. And so how do we live within this brief and precious time that we have. The very first power principle of time mastery I teach is do less. We're all trying to jam way too much into our days and into our weeks and into our lives, and it's not possible to do. And so it begins with becoming better masters of ourselves to master our time. And then, coming back to the earlier question you asked me is how do we prioritize those things within our precious time so that we show up resourcefully? And so this means actually carving out the time, holding sacred the time for self-care, for wellness practices, and making those the priority. Priorities is a very late development of the word. The original word had no plural to it. So how do we make wellness and well-being the priority?
Very important. I think that for all the struggles I have with procrastination, the one thing I've done for the whole of my life is make my self-care, my exercise and my nutrition a priority. And I think that has stood me in the absolute best stead possible. It's enabled me to get through lots of difficult situations and cope with things that I don't think I would have coped with without it. And being a slightly addictive personality, I probably would have resorted to other forms of self-abuse, really. So
procrastination, let's just do away with procrastination for a minute, Susan, and we can come back to wellness and wellness principles and how we prioritize them and maybe what we do. But procrastination is really about something much deeper. And it starts with, as Simon Sinek, the leadership guru, suggests, it starts with why. When what we're doing matters enough, when we have connected at a deep level with why it matters, then we do it.
Then that's when we procrastinate.
No.
Oh, that's
we
when
do.
right.
We
Right.
will do something when it matters enough.
Yeah.
We will cut through the procrastination. Our why is our rocket fuel. When we know why and we connect with it at a deep enough level, we will do it whether we feel like it or not. It helps us to get over those hurdles. So a lot of times when we procrastinate, we haven't connected with why it matters to us or to the world or the people we serve. And so it's not as high a driver as we think it should be. And the other pernicious piece around procrastination is that we think we ought to be motivated to do this thing that we're procrastinating around. I am betting that you don't procrastinate around brushing your teeth. You get up in the morning and you brush your teeth. You decided at one point in time that brushing your teeth mattered, that there was a greater purpose to brushing your teeth. And so you get up, you've decided once, and you do it. You see, motivation and feelings are really fleeting. I was doing a keynote at a university, and I got off stage, and a young man came up, and he said, "Oh, Mr. Hampton, it was your success principles. They were so inspiring, and I can see how they might work for me. But, I don't always feel like doing that stuff." And I got right up in his personal space. I said, "I don't really care how you feel. Because when you've connected with what you want and why it matters, and you've made the decision, then you do it." Ultra distance running. I'll give you an example. Ann Shabani and I, we run probably 6 to 8 to 10 miles a day, and on weekends, 15, 20 miles on a Saturday and a Sunday. We live in West County Cork, Ireland. Most days, it is pissing rain. It is ugly. Do you think I can't, it is very rare for me to say, "Wow, I really feel like running today." In fact, we have a rule. We never, ever ask ourselves, "Do you feel like running today?" Because the answer would be no. But we know that we want to do this because It's about our wellness. It's about our ability to show up effectively in the world and to feel good in the world. And so we've decided that that's going to be a practice, that it matters. Now, here's what's interesting. We get the shoes on, we get out the door, we get out about a kilometer. The air is lovely. Maybe it's not pissing rain. Maybe it's just a light Irish mist. But we feel better in our bodies. And this is the same thing when you write. Getting to the page is the hardest piece. If you sit down and start writing, oh, this is not so bad. Just about any practice, if you take that first step into it, then you can begin to pick up some motivation and some steam. So this procrastination thing is a red herring. First of all, if you're procrastinating, maybe it doesn't really matter all that much to you. And if it does, then we have to decide that we're going to do it, and we're not going to entertain the feeling of, do I feel like it or not, and just create it as a practice. Decide once.
Interesting. So maybe procrastination may not be the right word to describe like how I feel or what I do, because I think
maybe resistance, and we all feel resistance, and particularly now there's a fatigue that provides an additional, if you think about the speed bumps on a road, it's like another speed bump to keep us moving forward because we're tired.
I think it's usually about writing stuff, and so, and then I think, like I said before, it's when the writing is hard, and so then your sort of brain finds it really hard to concentrate or focus, or you feel like you're not writing well, and you sort of get that edgy feeling about,
So first of all, connecting with why I'm writing. I mean, we have an amazing global community, and people talk about list building and list development and lead generation. We talk about on our team and in our company, our list they're real people. They are real people. They are people who have entrusted their information to us, who are interested in what we do. And so when I'm sitting down and writing copy, I'm thinking about a Susan. How can I serve Susan today? So I'm thinking about this copy not as like some abstract thing, but I'm actually thinking about real human beings with challenges that I know. And from that place, as Anne may have shared with you, she does a lot of writing and writing coaching. You start with a shitty first draft. If you get something on paper, something, even if it's just crap, that's a wonderful place then to begin to reshape it. And so it's just a question of leaning into it, getting stuff on paper, and from there, beginning to craft it from that place of love and care for the people who are going to receive it.
Fantastic bit of advice, thank you. We better get back to talking about health and well-being for the listeners.
Yeah, but procrastination and resistance often is a barrier for people thinking about health and well-being.
Yeah.
Because the why isn't big enough. It's like, okay, I'll put that off. Well, why would losing, a stone or two matter to you? Why would bringing down your blood pressure or cholesterol matter? Do you want to dance at your daughter's wedding? Do you want to show up at your grandson's graduation? Is there a bigger why for you that you can connect it with?
And then I think, sorry, carry on.
There's a wonderful book I assigned to my coaches in training, and it's called Change or Die. And it's based upon the truism that someone who has a big cardiac event and they survive the cardiac event, and they sit down with the cardiologist, and the cardiologist says, look, you escaped this one, but you got to change your lifestyle or you're going to die. 90% of those people will not change.
Yeah, I know.
Change or die doesn't work. It's got to be attached to something more important than that.
And I was just going to say what you described to me about connecting with the writing, who I'm writing for. I think that will be really helpful for me. But I think that's a strategy people can use with connecting with themselves about, why am I eating this? Who am I eating this for, you know?
So that starts with that base of the triangle, our emotional
Yeah.
well-being.
Mm,
And now more than ever, we are jagged and jangled and always on. We are like a high voltage wire that has separated from the line and has dropped on the ground, and we're sparking all of the time.
mm,
And it is exacerbated by the 24/7 news cycle, by the 24/7 social media cycle, by the anger, by the acrimony that's in the world, and we are always jagged.
mm,
And one of the most important practices, the most important practice for me for decades, bar none, is a meditation practice. Having a simple meditation practice, doesn't need to have any religious connotations to it or theological connotations to it. It can be a simple breath practice. I've been a Vipassana, Vipassana meditation practitioner for 30 years. It is the single most important practice of my life. I never, ever, ever miss it. You can get an app, or you don't need an app. You can be in your PJs, you can be in your suit, you can do it on the subway, you can do it on a bus, you can do it in your home, you can do it anywhere. And the research shows that 5 minutes a day over 6 weeks, if you develop this as a practice, will reduce your inflammatory response, will reduce your stress and your overwhelm, will increase your productivity and your acuity and your focus. And the way I describe it when I'm teaching it is like that old holiday globe, that if you shake up that globe, the flakes
yeah,
are everywhere.
yeah.
And what happens with meditation over time, is those flakes begin to settle, and
Mm,
we get more peaceful inside. And we're not more peaceful all the time, but we're more able to connect with that place of settledness over time. And we become more resourceful, more resilient. And so getting that emotional piece of the triangle dialed in is key, as we've talked about, to
mm,
setting everything else up. And so
mm,
carving out some time for a meditation practice or a simple reflective practice, but going to silence, going to stillness, getting away from the jagged edge of social media and the dinging of the smartphone, going to silence will begin to settle the flakes and the noise so that you can get in touch again with what's going on, what you're feeling. And from that place, you can make much better decisions.
mm, mm. Well, I mean, I guess we both see the amount of stress that people are under, and, you know, and my work stress is one of the fundamental issues behind poor health. And you just mentioned all the inflammatory markers and the cytokines, and, you know, the stress weight gain, and then the stress affects all the other hormones, and then, you know, estrogen and testosterone and thyroid all get out of whack, and we just end up in this sort of vicious cycle of sort of disease process, really.
Well, and even before we get there, Susan, we often will go to unresourceful ways.
Mm.
I'm a big fan of an Argentine Malbec. Any of your listeners want to send me a nice Argentine Malbec, I'll certainly save it for a lovely special occasion. But I found that if I go there, well, first of all, alcohol is a depressant.
Mm.
And so we go there to tamp down these feelings, but it actually, if we're feeling overwhelmed, that's easily a downer place. We
Mm.
tamp down it further with a depressant. And
Mm.
then we often detox alcohol in the middle of the night. And so we drink to tamp down the anxiety, only to make ourselves more depressed. And then we wake up in the middle of the night and have a crappy sleep. And so
Mm.
that we're not getting the sleep we need, which then just feeds the cycle. And
Mm.
so thinking about our tendency, how do we unresourcefully tamp down our anxiety? So your audience is moving toward summer. My audience is moving toward winter. Um, I have seasonal affective disorder, which means my serotonin levels drop significantly this time of year. I've got to journal every day under a full daylight lamp. If I have to be, particularly around the holidays, I will avoid alcohol, not because I don't enjoy it, not because I'm on some type of soapbox about it, but I just know that it makes me down. And
Mm.
so I also know that when I get anxious and down, I go to sweets, I go to cookies, I go to crackers. Guess what? We do not bring that into the house. If there were a chocolate chip cookie in my house right now, Susan, I would hear it calling me. I'd have to say, Susan, we have to put the podcast on hold. I hear a chocolate chip cookie calling me. So we don't even bring that crap into the house because
Mm.
we know what would happen.
Mm. So people will say things like, well, it's easy for you, or you've got the discipline. What's your comment to those kind of statements?
First of all, it's not easy for me. First of all, from a business, we help business people grow and scale their businesses.
Mhm.
One of the things Ann and I rail against, we plant our flag at Summit Success on the BS that's promulgated on the interweb, that if you do this one step or these 3 steps, you're going to be an overnight success. And you can stand like me in front of my rented Lamborghini, in front of my expensive mansion, and be successful. That's BS. Ann and I have built 5 successful businesses from scratch, and every single one of them has taken time and a dirty 4-letter word called work. So that
Mm.
life is not easy. Getting good practices and disciplines aren't easy. I shared with you just before we went live, I raised 3 young boys on my own while managing a law firm. Yes, I had hair, but it was a long-term practice to get dialed in the things that would allow me to stay in it. That was a very difficult dozen years. And so we begin with small steps. Books are written 1 page at a time. Races are run 1 step at a time. Cathedrals are built 1 stone at a time. It's not this overnight thing. So I'll give you an example. When I was a young single dad raising my boys and managing this law firm, I was getting the kids up at 6:30 or 6:45 for 7:15 out to school and daycare. Well, that was lunacy. I was racing, I was mitigating fights, I was finding the homework, I was packing the backpacks, I was making the lunches. So I realized that if I was going to have any type of sanity, I would have to begin to find some time for myself. Well, that wasn't happening just any old place in the day. And I asked myself the question, I wonder whether or not it would be possible to back my own wake up time up 15 minutes. 15 minutes. So instead of getting up at like 6:30, it was like 6:15. It's like, ooh, that's great. And I lived with that a little while. And then I asked myself the question, I wonder what it would be like to have 30 minutes like this. That was even better. And then I thought, well, I wonder what it would be like to have 45 minutes like that. And over a period of months, I began to experiment with this because I knew I needed some time for myself. And ultimately, I backed that time up to 4:15 in the morning. And
Wow.
to this day, 20 something years later, every single day I get up at 4:15. If I don't have an alarm clock, my eyes pop up at 4:15 in the morning, and I journal, and I do my meditation, and I do my reflective reading, and I have a quiet cup of coffee, and I share time with Ann, and we get out and run along our beautiful Irish coast, and we carve out the first hours of our day for ourselves. But it started with 15 minutes.
Mm.
People
Mm.
say, sounds great to run, but I've never run, so I'm not going to run. I could get hurt. Well, walk 15 minutes. When Ann teaches women how to run marathons, which she does from time to time, I've never run. I want to run a marathon 6 months from now. Well, start by walking around the block this week, and then walk around the block again, and then walk around the block again. People they get these ideas. They hear people like you and me talk, and they go, either I can't do that, and they dismiss it, or they go whole hog. A lot of my people will go, well, I'm going to
Yeah.
run a marathon. Well, you're going to get hurt. It's not going to work. So just experiment, be curious. I'm a big believer in the F word, in fun. I like fun. I like curiosity. I like playfulness. I believe that it's important in business and in life. And so I'm always curious. We're vegetarian, not because we have like some like strident view on being a vegetarian. We began to experiment. Well, what will make our bodies feel better? And over a period of years, Susan, we just like tweaked. We began to experiment. What makes us feel better in our bodies? We tend toward veganism, but I'll tell you, I like a good pizza. So I doubt I'll ever go there, but I don't eat a lot of cheese because dairy makes me feel kind of crappy. But that's okay. Doesn't have to be all or none. It's like the Malbec. It doesn't have to be binary, but be aware of what allows you to feel resourceful and take baby steps in that direction.
There's a lot packed in. There's a very lot packed in there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. We've sort of got a little bit of a limit on our time because I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. Is there anything else that you think would be really worthwhile sharing with people? What would you think would be sort of a couple of key points that people could take away? I mean, not that you haven't already given us a whole lot.
So one key point, and it's right in our face right now, Susan, but one key point is that we tell ourselves that we have time to get this stuff dialed in, our wellness, our meditation, our diet, our exercise. We tell ourselves there's time. If the last 18 months have told us anything, they have told us how fragile and unpredictable life is. Joan Didion, in her beautiful memoir, The Year of Magical Thinking, opens up the book with the chapter describing her husband's sudden death at the dinner table. The opening line is, life changes in an instant, in an ordinary instant, and it does. And so I would invite your listeners to disabuse themselves of the thought that there is time. There is no time to get this right. Now is the time. Now is the only time we have. This one and precious moment is the only time we have. And so start today. And related to that, we just talked about that, is don't take it all in at once. Just begin to move in that direction. Just one step at a time in the direction that you want, which then presupposes that very first area that we exposed is, what is that direction I want to move toward, and why does it matter?
And really concentrate on that why. Yeah, great, really great point. Would you like to just share a little bit about, you've written a couple of books. Would you share a little bit about them before we go?
Of course. So my first book, Journeys on the Edge, Living a Life That Matters, is and was an Amazon bestseller, a two-time winner of the North American Book Awards, went to a second printing, rare second printing. It is the core of my message. Journeys on the Edge is the core of my messaging, which is that we are the co-creators of this magnificent thing that is our lives, and that we have the opportunity, dare I say, the responsibility to share our unique gifts and talents with a weary world in a way that also brings us light and love and joy. So Journeys on the Edge, Living a Life That Matters, available on Amazon and your favorite booksellers. My second book, which is related to one of the questions that you had, which is, this all sounds really good, Walt, but how do you do it? And so the power principles of time mastery really is much more tactical. Power principles of time mastery: do less, make more, have fun. also available at Amazon and other outlets, as well as on my website. Those books are available on my website. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But Power Principles of Time Mastery is not a big book. It's got really short chapters. People go, I love the short chapters. They don't take me much time. And I think, that's exactly right. They don't take you much time, but they give you very tactical ideas about how to do some of the stuff we've been talking about today. And if people want to reach me, they can find me at my website. Lean in, everyone. Take this note down. It's complicated. WaltHampton.com. Made it up myself.
And we'll make sure we put that in the show notes. I've read Journeys on the Edge, and I always highlight my books, and then I'm like, I just highlighted the whole book. It was just, oh my God, it was also relevant. It was absolutely fantastic. So I'll have to get the other one and have a look at that as well. I might be able to do some work on my time mastery. You've got a Facebook page as well, Walt?
I have Facebook, Walt Hampton Jr. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. You'll find my bald head dressed usually in black like I am just about everywhere.
Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure we get all that information into the show notes for everybody. And I really, really do appreciate you coming along and sharing your time and your enthusiasm. I can see why you are such a well-respected keynote speaker and presenter. Everybody says you're inspirational. So thank you very much for inspiring us all today.
I so appreciate the opportunity and the privilege to be with you. And I just want to honor you for the important work that you're doing in the world and the message that you share. So thank you so much for allowing me to be with you.
Oh, thank you for that.